Got some handouts coming around. We are in Judges chapter 10 this morning. If you'd like to turn there with me. Judges chapter 10, and Lord willing, we will cover the entire chapter. It's only 18 verses. We just came out of chapter 9, which was a chapter of 57 verses, totally given over to Abimelech, the heir descendant of Gideon. A very dark chapter, and that's saying something in a book like Judges. And now we have, I don't know, it's almost a parenthesis because we have two, I'm going to go ahead and call them minor judges. We don't have much information on them. It doesn't mean they weren't important, but the author here doesn't give us a ton of information. These two fellas are named Tola and Yair. They are, well, okay, so see, this is interesting. You notice already we're down toward the end of the Judges period chronologically, right? And yet we're only in chapter 10 out of how many chapters do we have? Out of 21. We're only halfway through. Well, less than. And here's why. Because a large chunk will be given to Samson. He's not in our system chronologically per se, but he's a significant character to the narrator of the book of Judges. And then we will go back in time and have two fairly lengthy chunks. One on the, you can see it up there, 19 to 20. This is the Benjamite War. Oops. I guess we start down here with the Danite migration. A couple of chapters on that. And then we'll go back actually earlier to the Benjamite War. But those are both pretty big chunks. So that's what takes up the second half of the book of Judges. You've got a tiny version of this on your handout, and even here, I was trying to get enough stuff together that the fonts are a little smaller than what I would like. But let me point some stuff out. We've got these two judges, Tola and Yair, and compared to the guys that come after them, their work, ministry, rule is fairly lengthy. It's not as short as some, the rest of them. Samson, we have 20 years on Samson, but we don't know exactly where he's placed. In this chapter, chapter 10, we will have the introduction of Ammonite and Philistine oppression. The text will then focus on Ammonite oppression. That's mostly Jephthah, the guy that sacrifices his daughter. And then we will return to the Philistine oppression, and that is mostly the ministry of Samson. The fact that they are introduced together here in chapter 10, I think, well, I didn't invent this. Somebody else did, and I think the idea is correct. Tells us that they're overlapping. They're not sequential. The Ammonite and Philistine oppressions. We're given lengths of oppression for each of them. Is it 18 and 40? But I think they actually overlap. You might also notice here that a lot of this, beginning with the judgeship of Yair, and then all these other guys overlap with the ministry of the priest Eli. There's not a ton in the Old Testament about Eli. He mostly shows up in the book of 1 Samuel. But we know about how long he was the priest, presumably high priest. And so it's during his ministry that a lot of this stuff takes place, and Samson for sure. And then Samuel is not far behind him, and we are not very far from the ministry, kingship, reign of Saul. And so we're getting right toward the end of the Judges period, even though we're only halfway through the book. So let's jump in and read a little bit of this. Judges chapter 10, starting with verse 1. Now after Abimelech died, Tola, the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, wow. Okay. Yeah, memorable guy. A man of Issachar arose to save Israel. And he lived in Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim. And he judged Israel 23 years. And then he died and was buried in Shamir. I know you have questions. So let me see if I can get ahead of some of those. The name Tola, does anybody have a note on what that word name means? Where's all our study Bibles? No, okay. It means purple, perhaps scarlet. It's not always clearly defined what the difference between some of those are. This is a potsherd that comes from a coastal city in Israel at a couple centuries later than this. You can tell it's purple. That's not paint. They had a factory there and processed the little mollusks that they made purple dye out of. And of course you got to put it in something to soak the cloth, and that something is a pot, and the pot then, you wish you could prevent it, but the pot soaks up the color. So a royal color, that I just thought that was kind of interesting. He's from Issachar. Issachar is up in the north here, but it says that he lived in Shamir of Ephraim. How that comes to be, I don't know. The clans were supposed to get territory, and the territory divided up the land sections to families, and that was supposed to be inherited by subsequent generations. But this guy is on the move. Maybe he was into commerce, trade, some kind of business. It's hard to say. The text doesn't tell us. Shamir, the city that he's from which he judges, where he's buried when he dies, we don't know. It sounds a bit like Samaria, Shamar. In fact, Omri, the king that built the capital city at Samaria, bought it from a guy named Shemer, which is basically the same as Shamir. You can read about that in Kings. That's located right about here. On this map, that's territory that belongs to Manasseh, but a lot of Bible geographers think there's a pretty good possibility that that's the place where Tola ruled from. In fact, if you look on your handout, right below Tola, there is a place identified as Shamir, ? And that is actually Samaria. So just so you know, I'm not making that up. This is the ESV Bible Atlas. Uncertain that's where it's at, but somewhere in this region that is placed in between Issachar and Ephraim. Perhaps that is the place from which he ruled. And that's all we have. 23 years. Let me hit the next guy, and then I'll say a couple things about the two of them together. Verse 3, and after him, Yair the Gileadite arose and judged Israel 22 years. And he had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys, and they had 30 cities in the land of Gilead that were called Havoth Yair to this day. And Yair died and was buried in Kamon. Okay. Map here. So Gilead is on the other side of the, so here's the Jordan River running between the Sea of Galilee in the north, and this map doesn't quite get to the Dead Sea. Gilead is the hill country on the eastern side of the Jordan Valley. We have half the tribe of Manasseh here, the other half is on the other side, Gad, and then further south a little bit will be the tribal territory of Reuben. So he is somewhere in this area. While we've got this map up, here is Ammon. It's actually the location that the little city dot there is the modern location of the Jordanian capital city of Ammon. And it's the same name. So if that helps you, Ammon, Jordan, Ammonites. And it is, oops, I didn't mean to do that. It is pretty much straight across, not quite. If we go south just a little bit on the other side, we have Jerusalem. So it's pretty much straight east of Jerusalem. Ya'ir means the one who brings light. Neither of my Hebrew students are here this morning. The word light is or. It's an olive resh. And the last part of that, ear, is the light bringer. This is kind of interesting to me, at least. This is an ostracon found at Masada. Pam, did you guys get into the museum at Masada? It's not real big. Okay, they actually had those there. I had never seen them in person. Okay. Get my pointer out here again. It is a bait and a nun, so Ben, Yod, Aleph, Yod, Resh, Ben Ya'ir. He was, Josephus tells us, so this is like 1,200 years later, but the same name. And Ben Ya'ir was one of the officials in the first revolt that held out there on Masada. They think these were actually, this is a rabbit trail. Yeah, too much.
Keep going.
Josephus tells us that they all committed suicide the night before the Romans were to take over Masada. They had breached the wall and were going to take the place the next day. And so they had a dozen guys that were leaders, and they tasked them to kill all the families. They didn't quite get all of them, Josephus says. And then they cast lots so that one guy would kill the other 11 and then commit suicide. And lo and behold, the excavators there in the 60s found a group of about that many ostraca with names written on them. Ostraca is a potsherd with an ink inscription like this. And so, of course, the excavator said, "You know what I think this is?" And some of the names are ones we know from that revolt. So, okay, that was an aside. So here we have this fellow by the name of Ya'ir living in the hill country on the eastern side of the Jordan. It is rough, hilly country in many parts. This is just one photo. I could show you a couple others when it's a little greener out. And he had 30 sons. You know what that implies. Yeah, multiple wives. And probably as many daughters as sons, roughly. They rode 30 donkeys. What's the significance of that? Okay, yeah, well, and that was kind of a prestige thing. When we think of a leader of a country riding an animal, like at the start of a parade or something, it's typically a horse, right? I mean, you want prestige, you ride a horse. That's what all of our Civil War generals rode. A donkey, really? And you see these guys riding around on donkeys even today in the Middle East, and it's like, that doesn't look comfortable, and it doesn't look noble. But in antiquity, the donkey was associated with being king. You might remember Absalom did some of that. And so that's probably what this is indicating, and in fact it tells us that each one of them had been assigned as a ruler of a city. So there were a group of cities Havoth Yair, that were ruled over by this man and his sons. A kind of a dynastic sort of thing, it seems. Not just him, but he's gonna pass power on to his sons, or at least attempt it. We saw that with Gideon too. So this is basically what we have for these two guys. Neither of them is referred to as a deliverer, which is a term that's been used quite a bit previously for judges, someone who delivers the people. These guys, that term is not used. Neither one of them is there an enemy specified, like they fought against so-and-so or that kind of thing. It could be that they kind of arose in response to what Abimelech had, the mess that Abimelech had made. It's a little hard to tell. It may also be that their main purpose for the guy that gave us this narrative is chronological. He does give us the years that they ruled. And if he's trying to give us a full sequence, that may be the reason that he includes them here. It could also be that their descriptions are so brief because there was no major warfare. Don't know. None is named anyhow. Okay. I think I'm going to move on then with verse 6. Then the sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of Yahweh. They served the Baals and the Ashtaroth, the gods of Syria, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the sons of Ammon, the gods of the Philistines. Thus they forsook Yahweh and did not serve him. This is the most elaborate description that we get in the book of Judges regarding Israel's apostasy. You're curious what the names of these gods are, right? Maybe a little bit? No, not really. Well, we actually have them named in a number of other places. And so I'd like to humor me. Let me show you, okay?
Baal's gotta be one.
Okay, so we have Baal and Ashtaroth. Neither of them here are associated with a people group, a specific people group, and they are just kind of the standard Canaanite gods. Baal or Baal just means Lord or Master, and he was one of the most common deities of the Canaanites, of this entire region. They often divvied him up and had Baal of a particular area, and then another Baal of this area or that area. Seems a little bit strange to us. Hard to tell if they actually thought those were different gods, or just how he was worshipped in a particular place. He was often associated with the bull. This is it's about this big. We saw it at the Israel Museum. Found up in the hills of Samaria at a cult site. And apparently it was an actual idol, something that people would worship. This is the storm god, Hadad, and you can see him standing on a bull. That was also a common, it's supposed to show you he's got power, right? Kind of like our bull riders today, except he's not clinging for all of his might. He's just standing there. And he's got lightning in both hands. And who is it that wields lightning? It can only be a god, right? There's no mortal that can do that. So he's standing there with his this. Yeah, the Romans and the Greeks liked to portray Zeus especially as that. This is Baal, not Hadad. There's some overlap between them in some ways, but he's got a mace raised in one hand, and then he's got lightning in the other. It almost looks like a plant or something, but we've seen enough of these to know that is supposed to be lightning as well. Okay, so let me go back here. Am I doing something there, Matt? No? Okay. 1 Kings 11:5, and you don't need to look these up because I got the text up there for you. Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians. Sidon was mentioned in our text here. And after Milcom, the detestable idol of the Ammonites. Well, right there we've got names of two of them, Ashtaroth and Milcom. 1 Kings 11:33, further down in that chapter, they've forsaken me, they worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Milcom, the god of the Ammonites. So two of those are repeats. Chemosh is new. 2 Kings 23. Solomon, the king of Israel, had built for Ashtoreth the abomination of the Sidonians, and Chemosh the abomination of Moab, and Milcom the abomination of the Ammonites. There are those three again. Do you associate anybody with the Philistines? A god? A deity? Probably come to you eventually.
Moloch?
No. Judges 16. The lords of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god. And you know, as that story progresses, they had the ark in the temple,
Oh, that's right.
and down goes the god. First it breaks off his wrists, and then his head. 2 Kings chapter 1 and verse 2. Go inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron. Ekron is a Philistine city. Whether I shall recover from this sickness. So that seems to be another god that the Philistines probably adopted from the Canaanites. One more here is the Ekron inscription. I'll show you that in a moment. And this is not scripture, but this inscription here, I'll just show it to you. It looks like this. But that's hard to read, so I've got you some English here. And it says, the temple that Achish, the son of Padi, the son of Asad, the son of Ada, the son of Yair, ruler of Ekron, built for, and then we've got 5 letters, and they're without consonants. Sorry, they are consonants. They're without vowels. And so we're not entirely sure how to pronounce this name. Patagayah. But it's...
Is that showing respect, not spelling out the name?
No, actually, none of, the only reason we can do the rest of these is because we know what the words are. But we've never run across this goddess before to know what her name is. But it's from the Iron Age, and they worshipped her. And in fact, while I'm here is, and we don't know who this is, but somebody the Philistines worshipped. Lamed le tu patagaya. Whoever that is. Don't know. Another Philistine god. So this is Sidon. It's clear up on the north, the coast of Israel. South of Beirut a little ways. These are some probably god figures, could be warriors, but a little hard to believe they would cast something like this that wasn't deities. The gods of The Moabites, this is Kerach. What you see here, for the most part, is actually Crusader fortress, but it's built on a very ancient city, and it was the capital of the Moabites, Kir. Bill was just mentioning the Moabite stone to me this morning, put up by Mesha, the king of Moab. And I find this interesting because both the name Yahweh and the name Chemosh, their God, are mentioned in this inscription. So here you can see the name Yahweh, and here you can see the name Chemosh. And the sentence says, I took the vessels of Yahweh and dragged them before Chemosh. This is part of his bragging about having overrun and taken over Israelite territory. And guess what else I did? And he killed a bunch of people and stole a bunch of material and took over cities. But he acknowledges that the God of Israel is Yahweh, and he states many times actually in this inscription that his own God is Chemosh. So this is part of the modern day Ammon. It's a huge city. It's the capital of Jordan. But this hill, this site, is where the ancient city was located. And we do have this statue head. It may be a representation of Milcom, the god of the Ammonites. And I wanted to show you, I already showed you this inscription from Ekron. We have these little figurines from Philistine country. Ashdod and Tel Kasila are both within Philistine territory. They're referred to as an Ashdoda because they were found at Ashdod. But it's some sort of female deity. We don't know why they made it into the shape of a chair. There are a number of these that have been found. This is not a unique find, but they obviously have some cultic connection and may in fact represent the Philistine gods. So Israel says, you know what, it would be a good idea if we started worshiping some of the other gods around here.
Be more inclusive?
Be more inclusive. Yeah. They struggled with this for centuries and centuries. It's really not until the exile into Babylon that this ends, and they begin to worship just the true God. And even there, they have all kinds of issues following that, but they don't typically then go after foreign gods. But for centuries and centuries and centuries here, this is their way.
Was Jair, or how's that pronounced?
Yair.
Was he kind of a stop to this happening? Because it almost, both of the oppressions happen almost immediately. And then this is worded like...
Well, I mean, you would kind of assume that he slowed that down. This is even more obvious on your handout. I don't think I put this map into my slides, but you can see where Yair and Tola lived, and you can tell neither one of them rules the entirety of the country. I think that's obvious. So they probably were something of a slowed down the worship of foreign gods in their areas. The text doesn't say much. I wish it did. But overall, the Israelites did this kind of stuff, and they forsook Yahweh. What does that mean? What would it have meant in that day?
Turn your back.
Okay, yeah. Give me some specifics. What would they do? What would they not have done?
Stopped offering the daily sacrifices.
Okay. Stop offering the daily sacrifices.
Stop turning to his justice.
Yeah. What was the average? Okay, yeah, they were supposed to support the tabernacle, the things that took place there, in a couple of different ways. And we see this, for example, at the start of 1 Samuel. Elkanah and his wives go up to Shiloh to offer sacrifice. They may be bringing some money. They certainly bring animals to sacrifice. And if you're familiar with that whole Samuel story, Eli has a couple boys that go and they're supposed to get meat. They're supposed to be supported out of the sacrifices. But what do? They decide what parts they want. It's unlawful. So yeah, the people were supposed to support the tabernacle, bring sacrifices. So yeah, I would think those are some of the major ways. And then of course, so those are things they stopped doing, forsaking, turning away from Yahweh. And then they started worshiping all these other gods.
Does idol worship usually historically involve sexual immorality also?
Does idol worship usually involve sexual immorality as well? I think I would say no, at least not necessarily. I think there was a major component of sacrifice, bowing down, obeisance, honoring the god. Sometimes we know it involved immoral behavior too. And sometimes it involved violence. Some very nasty forms of violence, child sacrifice and those kinds of things. But yeah, it wasn't, I wouldn't assume it in every case. Good question. Okay. So, verse 7, and the anger of Yahweh burned against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and into the hands of the sons of Ammon. And they afflicted and crushed the sons of Israel that year. For 18 years they afflicted all the sons of Israel who were beyond the Jordan in Gilead, in the land of the Amorites. And the sons of Ammon crossed the Jordan to fight also against Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was greatly distressed. Okay, so we begin here with two oppressors that God sends against Israel, Philistines, Ammonites, and then we get a little bit of an extended explanation regarding the Ammonites. The length of their oppression, 18 years, and where they worked in Gilead, and they even crossed over into the other tribes. And I do have a map for this. So centered in Ammon, that was their historical capital. And by the way, this is an 18-year oppression. This is not, when that 18 years comes to a close, that does not mean they no longer fight against the Ammonites. You might remember that David had fought against the Ammonites. He sent Joab to fight against the Ammonites, and he stayed at home in Jerusalem and got himself into trouble. But that was Ammon. So this is a significant amount of time later. The Ammonites do not go away at the end of these 18 years. But here they are expanding their territory, and they are even moving into Ephraim, Benjamin, and Judah. They're crossing the Jordan River and moving into the heartland of Israel. Now the authors put this on hold for a moment because we're going to get into the Jephthah cycle, and it won't be until later that we pick up with the Philistines. But he notes here that the Philistines begin oppression at the same time. The Philistines are along the coast. And so guess which way they're pushing? The other side. Israel is in a big hurt.
Just like our east and west coast.
The east and west coast. And this little sliver in the middle. Oh boy, by the time we get to Saul, we will see that the Philistines are like living up here in the central Benjamin Plateau. They've got garrisons up here. Even in the days of David, there's a garrison of Philistines at Bethlehem. So don't underestimate the threat that these guys posed to the Israelites. What's that? Back in their day. I'm gonna keep moving here. But yes, you are not wrong. In Judges 13, they'll tell us, come back to the Philistines and tell us that the Philistines oppressed Israel for 40 years. So this is really some extreme distress for Israel. And I'm going to keep moving here. Verse 10. Then the sons of Israel cried out to Yahweh, saying, we have sinned against you, for indeed we have forsaken our God and served the Baals. And Yahweh said to the sons of Israel, did I not deliver you from the Egyptians, the Amorites, the sons of Ammon, the Philistines, and also when the Sidonians and the Amalekites and the Maonites oppressed you? You cried out to me, and I delivered you from their hands. Yet you have forsaken me and served other gods. Therefore, I will deliver you no more. Go and cry out to the gods which you have chosen. Let them deliver you in the time of your distress. Whew. That's not a good reply from Israel's perspective. God says, nope, we've done this enough times. You say you've offended me, and that's a confession. Is it actual sorrow? Is it repentance? Well, he doesn't say that. Maybe it's implicit. But is it genuine? God doesn't seem to think so. It's like, yeah, now you're hurting. Go cry out to the gods that you chose over me, which is ironic, of course. You thought these other gods were better than me. You were going to serve them instead of me. And now those nations whose gods you decided to serve are coming against you. Enjoy it. I'm kind of putting words in God's mouth a little bit there, but isn't that the gist of it? You know, you chose them as your gods. Have yourself a good time. Let them come and rescue you. Why do you forsake me and then ask me to rescue you? It's a legitimate point. And interestingly enough, we're going to see here, well, yeah, at the end of the chapter, it's the Israelites that decide we need another deliverer. Everything we've had up to this point has been the Israelites cry out, God chooses a deliverer. These guys are going to decide we need to find somebody, and Jephthah's the guy they choose. Now, God's not uninvolved in that. The text will specifically tell us that God assists Jephthah, but this is not the normal pattern, and this is not good.
Kris,
Yes.
how do you suppose that God communicated to them and that they were
It's a good question, and I don't have a good answer. How did God communicate? How did this conversation take place? Perhaps one of these judges, although this seems to come about kind of at the end of their tenures, we have a number of anonymous men of God in the Old Testament. Is it another one of those? Is it something that takes place at the tabernacle? Do some of the elders go down to the tabernacle and make an official inquiry of God through the high priest or something? The options I can think of. But yeah, it's just presented as conversation. And you're like, how did that take place? Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, so the sons of Israel then, in verse 15, said to Yahweh, we have sinned. Do to us whatever seems good to you. Only please deliver us this day. So they put away the foreign gods from among them and served Yahweh, and he could bear the misery of Israel no longer. Fascinating. So the Israelites admit their guilt. What exactly to do with this? I mean, they say we have sinned, and then they immediately, is it request or demand salvation by God from these oppressors? They also do something. I was kind of thrown off initially by my New American Standard. They put away their gods. And I'm like, that kind of sounds like stuffing back in the shelf for later use. Probably a better translation is remove. They removed the gods from among them. I looked up a few uses of that word, and it does seem to be like get rid of. You might remember Jacob saying that to his family and descendants, remove the foreign gods from among us. He uses the same word. Joshua used this same word as well. The first one in Genesis 35:2, then Joshua a couple times in Joshua 24 tells the Israelites, uses this same word. It's given as a command, remove the gods. So I don't think it's just they weren't willing to go the whole way. I think the text here is saying they did the right thing. They got rid of these foreign gods.
Rachel was still trying to sneak them out.
Yeah. On the back of her camel. It couldn't have been a very comfortable seat. Sitting on those little hardened clay figurines. You know that I enjoy reading Daniel Block's commentary, New American Commentary, and he makes an interesting observation here. The Israelites don't seem to recognize that God has already done what was right, bringing in oppressors. Right? They turn themselves over to him. Do what seems right to you. Well, that is what he is doing here already. If he were to raise up a deliverer, that would actually be a suspension of what was right in favor of what is gracious. They don't ask for forgiveness specifically. They don't ask for grace. But you get the gist of it. They throw themselves on his mercy. And that's kind of where the narrator leaves this. Please deliver us this day. Put away the foreign gods. So look at verse 17. Then the sons of Ammon were summoned. That's going to be the Ammonite military. And they camped in Gilead. And the sons of Israel gathered together and camped at Mizpah. So there's going to be a fight. And the people, the leaders of Gilead, said to one another, who's the man who will begin to fight against the sons of Ammon? Whoever it is, he shall become head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. So maybe you picked up in there, we need a rescuer, a deliverer. We need a judge. We need a military leader. Who's it going to be? And whoever it is that will go in and fight against these guys, we'll make them ruler over all of Gilead. This is not at God's direction. This is, hey, I have a good idea. And you know how the Jephthah story goes. So let me skip through a few slides here and move to the end. Because it's that time. A couple things here. God remains faithful to the covenant, which includes curses for disobedience. You can look at that. I guess I ought to put that text up there for you. You can look at that in a number of places. Deuteronomy 27, We've got this is part of the blessings and cursings, how you're supposed to live, how you're not supposed to live. The very first thing, cursed is the man who makes an idol or a molten image, an abomination to Yahweh, the work of the hands of a craftsman, and sets it up in secret. And all the people reply, Amen. We agree with that. Obviously, a violation of this covenant, and they have invoked the curse on themselves by doing that. Joshua 23, be diligent to love Yahweh your God. If you ever go back and cling to the rest of these nations, which is what is happening here, these which remain among you, if you intermarry with them so that you associate with them and they with you, know with certainty that Yahweh your God will not continue to drive these nations out from before you, but they will be a snare and a trap to you and a whip on your sides and thorns in your eyes until you perish off this good land which Yahweh your God has given you. It was a warning from Joshua. A warning that had apparently been forgotten. And second point, the corrupt nature of sinful man is highlighted. I mean, we sit here and kind of shake our heads and wonder, after all you guys have been through, really? You go and worship these foreign gods and you abandon the true God that brought you up out of Egypt and gave you this land and has blessed you in so many ways. There's no visible instinct toward righteousness apart from God's intervention. We don't see anybody standing up and saying, you know what, guys? I mean, just like off the cuff, we probably shouldn't be worshiping these gods. Let's have a revival and move back to worship of the true God. Nobody does that. Jephthah, of all people, he helps mitigate that oppression somewhat, but he's not a great spiritual leader. The guys we've seen before, and Gal, Deborah, they've been picked by God and then kind of clean things up. I mean, Gideon, my goodness, he has to be told to go down and tear down the altar of Baal and this kind of stuff. Boy, yeah. So I would just maybe add to that, for us, it takes a concerted effort to do anything different. If we're going to remain faithful, if we want to push our kids and our grandkids to remain faithful, it's not going to happen by itself. That takes work. Because our natural instinct, right off to the side, into all sorts of evil. We don't go cast a little bronze figurine of Baal and worship that. But we've got our own things. And some of them are equally nasty. And to avoid that is unnatural. It takes God's assistance. And it takes commitment. And even then, we are not the ones who determine what our kids do or what our grandkids do. We can do everything within our power, and they still make their own choices. But if you want to give them a fighting chance, it takes work. And I would encourage you to do that. Invest the time, do what you can, and that's what God requires of us. We won't give an answer for the decisions that our kids and grandkids make, but we will give an answer for our own actions, and part of that is influencing the people around us, whether it's our descendants, whether it's our parents, whether it's other people around us. So I'll leave you with that, and I do need to close, so I will. Lord, thank you for your word. Some hard lessons in here, some great reminders. Just ask for your grace and ask that you would continue your work in our lives. Bring these things to mind as it's appropriate, and help us to give honest consideration to the way that we're living, the way we behave, the influence we have on other people, and grant us your wisdom and your grace as we go about that. In your name I pray.